What's up, guys? Steve with the MMA Minute. UFC 309 is behind us. I had some trending topics that I want to talk about. We had 3 fraud checks in a row on the main card. Oliveira versus Chandler, kind of a fake war when you really look at it. I'll explain that a little bit in detail. And then Jon Jones absolutely dominates Stipe. Is Tom Aspinall next? Those are the 3 topics I'll be talking about. Timestamps are going to be down below. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment down below. So just jumping right into it, the opener of the main card was Ruffy, Huffy, however you pronounce it, taking on James Yontop. And really, for me, the story of the night there was that Ruffy was a minus 1,000 favorite. He barely skated by, if we're being completely honest. I mean, round 2 was all his. He was landing some ridiculously heavy shots that probably knock out 90% of the division. James Yontop has a granite chin, heart of a lion, so he was able to keep coming forward and somehow just kept surviving. But when you look at it, Yontop was winning round 1. Ruffy had a big shot landed in the last maybe minute or so of that fight. Had he not landed that big shot, Yontop takes round 1. Ruffy definitely takes round 2, and then James Yontop comes on in round 3. I don't know if Ruffy was just cruising because he thought he was up 2 rounds, but Yontop definitely won round 3. So it's a unanimous decision, but it was actually razor thin, and that's James Yontop, supposed to make 155. Couldn't do that, so he calls for a catch weight, and he couldn't even make catch weight. So how hard was this guy actually training? What condition was this guy actually in? And Ruffy goes in there, has some glimpses of being a star, massive offensive potential there for sure, but overall not a great win. So I'm not saying this is a full-on fraud check, but it's definitely got my attention. I'm definitely taking note that Ruffy is kind of low volume. He clearly wants to get that round 1 knockout highlight on his reel pretty much every time he's in there. He's just setting up for the big kill shot, trying to be as creative as possible. And it just feels like at some point that might catch up to him. Now, maybe he will change his style eventually and mature, but taking away from that fight, Yontop's stock goes up a ton. Ruffy, it probably just stays the same. So I'm keeping an eye on him. It's not a total fraud check just yet, but he is being added to my list. Next fight, and fraud check for days here, Karine Silva. And I said it in my breakdown that Viviana Araujo had the perfect style to win a fight against Karine Silva, who was the much younger fighter, the much more dangerous fighter. But really, the story of that fight was Karine Silva couldn't get the fight to the ground. And without getting the fight to the ground, she kind of looked terrible. And when she was able to get the fight to the ground, you see the glimpses, the submission threats that she has. She did land a couple big shots on the feet, but eventually she just started to gas. In round 3, she was just pulling guard, dropping down to her back. She looked terrible. The visualization of her in round 3 was horrible. She wanted to quit. She wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. So I'm super happy that the judges actually gave Araujo the win, because you probably could have scored that for Karine Silva. It was a pretty close decision. I think it could have went either way, but I'm just very happy that the judges gave this one to Araujo 29-28 across the board. Karine Silva, she's got to figure it out, man. I don't know. She's already 30 years old. She has been killing people left and right, getting round 1 submission after round 1 submission. But I said it, hitting this level of competition, that's going to balance out. She's got to learn how to go a heavy 15 minutes. She was on her way to potentially being a championship contender. She can't even go 3 rounds. She can't even go 3 rounds, let alone 5. So Karine Silva really needs to clean it up. Otherwise, she just got fraud checked by a 37-year-old Araujo who's past her prime. She looked good, not that good, but still, Karine Silva needs to figure it out. That's a fraud check. And then the next fight, Bo Nickal taking on Paul Craig. I mean, it's a 30-27, unanimous across the table for Bo Nickal. But that doesn't really tell the entire story. When you actually watch that fight, it's actually funny. By the numbers, Bo Nickal lands 54 significant strikes to Paul Craig's 47. That's how razor thin it was on the feet. 0 takedowns from Paul Craig, 0 takedowns from Bo Nickal. I do think Bo Nickal understood the assignment. If he takes down Paul Craig, you immediately give Paul Craig a chance to win that fight and end the fight at any given point. So credit to Bo Nickal for having the fight IQ to not shoot for takedowns. He probably could have at least mixed in a few of them, but he decided to stand because he knew he would have the striking advantage, and he barely had the striking advantage. And that is sad because Paul Craig is probably one of the worst. No offense to him. Paul Craig's the man. Submissions for days, but this dude is not known for his striking. Bo Nickal should be finishing that fight, or at least doubling him up on strikes, or at least getting a knockdown. But he landed a few clean shots, but outside of that, I mean, it was very underwhelming. Again, this is a minus 1,300 favorite, and I know people will point to the fact that Bo Nickal just started in MMA. He just started working on his striking. Well, he's 28 years old. He has a few more years to figure it out. I'm still not all that impressed. If this guy's going to hit the top 15 or even the top 10 real soon, he's going to have some problems. So, again, not a total fraud check, but when people are calling Bo Nickal the next guy up, a future champion of this division, we got to give pause a little bit here. We got to just slow it down, pump the brakes just a little bit. Bo Nickal needs to figure out that striking. Now, granted, 9 times out of 10, he can probably out-wrestle anybody, might not need the striking, but if he wants to be a champion one day, he's got to put it all together. So again, this is not a total fraud check, but I am making note of it. And then we had the co-main event of the night, and this, to me, was completely unexpected because you watch this first fight, right? Michael Chandler nearly finishes the fight in round 1. Oliveira survives, immediately finishes the fight in round 2. I thought we were going to get the same exact scenario where one of these guys was going to finish the fight within the first 2 rounds, and there was no chance we were going to see a round 3 or more. But that wasn't the story because Charles Oliveira was actually very patient. He actually showed some maturity in there. He was actually slowing down the fight, taking Michael Chandler down, racking up control time, had a few submission attempts in there, and really was just cruising, absolutely cruising to a victory over the course of 4 straight rounds. And why I put in here that this was a fake war is because, yes, Michael Chandler came on much later in this fight in round 5. He definitely hurt Charles Oliveira on the feet. But when the fight got to the ground and Michael Chandler was throwing down some pretty vicious ground and pound, every single shot that he landed was to the back of the head. And Keith Peterson just stood there and didn't do a damn thing about it. Didn't issue a warning, didn't say a damn thing, let Michael Chandler continue. I thought at some point he was going to stop the fight and Michael Chandler was going to win. And everyone was just going to go absolutely nuts, screaming that those were all to the back of the head, which is what we ended up screaming anyway at the end of the fight. But DuBronx does survive, eventually takes the back of Michael Chandler, slows things down again, shows that maturity, and it was really just a completely one-sided fight when you actually look at it from an overall point of view. But in that moment, in round 5, you kind of just forgot about the first 4 rounds because Michael Chandler, absolute beast mode. Dude's an absolute warrior. That's the best conditioning we've ever seen Michael Chandler in. And I'm just thinking of when Oliveira's riding his back and all of a sudden Michael Chandler, goes for the suplex. Then he gets back up on his feet. Charles Oliveira hanging off, goes for a second suplex. Like the way that ended visually for Michael Chandler was awesome. So, big credit to both guys. Those are really 2 of the better guys in the division. And if Michael Chandler's showing up like that, conditioning wise, he's going to be a problem even for another couple years, even though he is like 37, 38 years old. So I say fake war because Oliveira completely dominated. And if you take away those shots to the back of the head, how much of a war was it actually? So curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know down below. And then the main event, Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic. Hindsight is just so 2020. Stipe Miocic, 42 years old, and he looked every bit of that age. I mean, he was slow in there. The durability was in question. He got taken down very easily by Jon Jones on a nice trip takedown. Didn't really have any answers when he was working off of his back. Jon Jones was just laying down elbow after elbow. That was a vintage Jon Jones performance. But I couldn't help but just picture both these guys exchanging on the feet. Yes, Stipe looked slow. I didn't think Jon Jones looked all that great. I mean, when Stipe Miocic is basically just a punching bag. Of course, Jon Jones is going to look great. I couldn't help but just keep thinking, dude, Tom Aspinall probably wipes the floor with both these guys right now. Like the mobility that Tom Aspinall has, that athleticism, it's just the youth that he has, is the speed on the feet, the power on the feet. I just kept thinking to myself, I don't think either of these guys is going to beat Tom Aspinall. And then after the fight, after Jon wins, gets on the mic, he didn't call out Tom Aspinall, but he said, maybe we'll give you guys what you want. And to me, that's not Alex Pereira. That's not Jamal Hill. That's got to be Tom Aspinall. He said he's not retiring, so he's got another fight in him. We have to imagine it's going to be Tom Aspinall, who was there in person. They did not bring him into the octagon. Kind of a wasted opportunity there, but it's got to be Jon Jones. It's got to be Tom Aspinall. And just watching that fight, I think you got to take Tom Aspinall. The only question mark is that what happens if this fight gets extended? We've never really seen Tom Aspinall go a hard 15 minutes. Can he handle that? What's going to happen if Jon Jones can out-wrestle him? Can he work off of his back? We don't know those things. So maybe Jon Jones can pull one last huge win out of his pocket. But until that actually happens, it looks like Tom Aspinall wipes the floor with both dudes. But let's just hope that this fight happens. That's UFC 309, the recap. Let me know what you guys think down below. Like if you haven't, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys next time.